Thanks for joining us today for a webinar with VCU Alumni called What Just Happened? Bitcoin, a panel with alumni and experts. This program is part of a monthly What Just Happened series of alumni experts covering timely topics and breaking news, scheduled the last Thursday of every month, so put it on your calendar. My name is Dr. Amy Gray Beck, the Executive Director for Alumni Relations at VCU. We will be recording this webinar, captioning it, and sharing it on our YouTube channel for later viewing. You can catch all of our previous virtual programs and Q&As on the VCU Alumni YouTube channel. VCU Alumni has been offering a number of virtual lifelong learning and personal and professional development webinars. And our next webinar will be this coming Monday at 1 p.m. called Let's Talk Enneagram. So if you know your Enneagram, if you don't, you can take it online, it's free. And we'll be talking with an Enneagram alumni expert. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? I must say, before I introduce our moderator, that although this panel is full of experts on the topic, they are not licensed financial advisors, not your contracted financial advisors, and their opinions are their own and not the opinions of VCU or VCU alumni. They're here to share their opinions and what they know to be true with us, and that's what we are here for. That being said, our moderator today is VCU alumnus and my good friend, Joe Schilling. Joe Schilling is a cryptocurrency enthusiast who has been involved in the space in various ways since 2014. He earned a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Virginia and is a graduate of the MBA program at the VCU School of Business. Joe is currently on the executive team at Reynolds Community College here in Richmond and previously worked at VCU, where we met. He also serves as the chair of the investment committee for the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation, which works to foster an equitable and healthy Richmond region. Joe, thanks for being here today and moderating our panel.
Well, thank you for that warm introduction, Amy. Hello to all the panelists, to the audience, everybody. I greatly appreciate your and VCU's Office of Alumni Relations work to bring together this fantastic panel. We've put some questions together to get the conversation going, several of which came from our wonderful audience. If anyone in the audience has additional questions as we go along, you can either put them in the chat feature or the Q&A feature on the webinar or as a Facebook comment. And we're going to try to get to as many of them as we can, time permitting. It's going to be a fast hour. But before we kick off that conversation, I'm excited to introduce our talented panelists. First, we have Dr. Vivian Jidoku. Dr. Jigotu is an associate professor in the African American Studies Department at VCU. She is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and has worked at VCU since 2008. Dr. Jokudo, I just remembered that's how you actually pronounce your name. Thank you, Amy, for that audio recording earlier, is a cultural psychologist whose work includes research on the cultural grounding and drivers of money behaviors, for example, spending, saving, and investing, and the adoption and failure of different forms of payment in developing economies. Her publications on culture and money explore how culture shapes the manner in which money is used in various formats within and beyond social networks. She does this by studying what happens to people's money behavioral repertoires when the form of money is changed, either due to central bank decree or technological innovation. Dr. Jokudo, thank you for being here with us today. Our next panelist is Dr. Joe Walton. He is currently the Information Security Customer Engagement Manager at MITRE. He is a 3-time graduate of VCU, receiving his BS in Science, his MPA in Executive Leadership, and his PhD in Public Policy and Administration. His dissertation was titled, Why We Use a New Currency, the Role of Trust and Control in Explaining the Perception and Usage of Bitcoin. He has developed through his research theories and explorative narratives that focus on policy and sociologic treatments of currency and blockchain systems based on his original matrix of trust and control defining socioeconomic value and exchange. His broader research interests focus on policy implication for case uses of cryptocurrencies and blockchains to further digital identity, security, privacy, and decentralized governance to further liberal democratic principles. Dr. Walton, thank you for being here today. Next up is Will Middleton. I guess William Middleton goes by Will, received his Bachelor of Applied Science and in accounting degree from VCU, his master's in accounting from Virginia Tech, and also a master's in data science from UVA, Wahoo Wah. Will is the chief managing member of Blockchain Tech, LLC, an investor-backed cryptocurrency mining operation. In addition to running Blockchain Tech with his partners, he is heavily involved in the blockchain industry and regularly speaks to local organizations such as Startup VA, which is a local tech incubator here in town, the Professional Liability Underwriters Society, Plus, the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce, the CFA Institute of Virginia, Virginia Commonwealth University, and the University of Virginia. Welcome, Will.
Thank you, guys.
And finally, we have Connor Riley. Connor is a current VCU School of Business student, love that, studying finance and is expected to graduate in 2022. Connor has a passion for decentralized finance, often known as DeFi. I know he's going to get into that later. He's currently residing in Miami, where he attended the Bitcoin conference. He is also doing an internship as an executive analyst with a Richmond-based startup called Pocket Properties, and he has landed future work with a venture capital firm. At VCU, Connor is the president and founder of the VCU Blockchain Club, which started in January, and it's been bringing in guest speakers and experts on blockchain and cryptocurrency and bringing VCU students together who have an interest in this area. We're thrilled to have a student on the panel, so thank you for joining us today, Connor. So again, a tremendous thanks to our panelists for carving out some time and to our audience for carving out some time. So, let's hop into it. I guess first question, I'm going to give it to Will. I think there's a pretty wide level of familiarity among our audience with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Can you give us kind of a quick 101 refresher on, what defines those two words?
Cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Yeah, so cryptocurrencies in general are technologies that are based on an open, permissionless blockchain system, which is basically just a global ledger of transactions kind of since the inception of any one of these protocols. They allow people to innovate on top of them without permission. And you'll see Connor talk about that a little bit later, probably with DeFi. There's been a lot of growth there. Bitcoin is was started. It was probably it is the first kind of globally globally successful blockchain application that has kind of driven this space, and it was first intended to be a global cash system. We can talk about where people might think it is now. I'm sure Joe has some comments there. But yeah, it's these are just global payment systems that anyone can participate in, whether you're here or abroad or pretty much anywhere that you have an internet connection.
I like that you mentioned cash. So a question for Joe. So this is a $20 bill. I think everyone accepts that this is money, greenbacks, but then this is a rock. This is not money. So Joe, can you kind of walk us through, what is money? Is Bitcoin money? Help our audience kind of understand more of, what money is.
Yeah. So, and that's the central question. And there's a economist with the Cato Institute named George Selgin that defined money. And of course, there's lots of definitions of it over the years and centuries and millennia. Money is just any kind of consensus system. The problem is reaching that consensus. So if I owe you, you cut the grass in my yard, and so I owe you $50 for that. If I say, hey, look, I'm going to give you a mint condition baseball card of Honus Wagner from 1912 or something like that. You can look that up on eBay or various other things and say, wow, that's worth $15,000 or however much it's worth. And so you might say, yeah, sure, I'll take that because, I can sell that for more or I can exchange that for more. And so that's a form of currency. Currency systems go way back to various species, as it's called, physical things, gold and silver, we understand that. But shells and beads and all kinds of other things have been currency systems, even as recently as the Great Depression in the early 1900s, when people would still use small things of value to exchange them. There are various reasons why we have a bill now and coins now that represent more than the actual value of the unit. But it really just boils down to a consensus system that one or more people agree to. The more people agree to it, the better. But in some cases, in some societies and economies, it doesn't even really take money for them to function. There are gift economies, there are exchange economies, there still is barter in a lot of places. And so money really has multiple utility values, 7 or 8 by some counts, but the main one is a medium of exchange and a store of value. Unit of account is another one. And so right now, the dollar bill, or predominantly around the world, has served all these functions, and it's kind of morphed into that. In other countries and other nationalities, nations, there are different units and currencies that are used for those functions. And so for cryptocurrencies to come onto the scene, a part of the struggle with how to figure out how best to use it is that we're trying to apply Bitcoin or something, or one particular currency, for all of these uses. And it's worked poorly for the dollar, which is why the Bitcoin, or some of the original reason for Bitcoin to have hit the scene. It's working perfectly for the dollar. And so we're trying to struggle as a society to figure out how, in an economy, to figure out how to decouple these things and what works best with smartphones and cell phones and computers all over. But again, it's just trying to achieve a consensus on a given medium of exchange and have many more people buy into that. So you get this network effect where everybody is using it and it works kind of fluidly as a universal equivalent, or like water. I mean, people can exchange water in some cases and in a way that has the same value. A gallon of water to a person is the same as a gallon of water to another person. Not so with specie currencies or digital bits and ones and zeros or national currencies.
Yeah, you mentioned buying. So I guess we had a question from Sandra from Manchester, Connecticut, asking, how does one purchase cryptocurrency and what can you buy with cryptocurrency? I'll throw that out there for Will or Joe or anybody who wants to chime in, maybe help our audience understand where it comes from. How do you buy it? Where can you use it?
I mean, I'll say quickly, I mean, you buy it on an exchange, and I'll say that I have come to be particularly frustrated by the distribution method of Bitcoin or of any other cryptocurrency. The dollar and the way that we got to where we are with the dollar or national currencies, the euro, for example, that's an example of a new currency hitting the scene and converting to it. But the distribution method for cryptocurrency is a bit of a conundrum, because you have to go buy it, which when you buy it from somebody that's telling you that it's the best thing to do, they're giving away their cryptocurrency in exchange for dollars, which they're telling you aren't as good as the cryptocurrency. So there's an inherent paradox there, but you can buy it through various exchanges with a smartphone or web browser. And the real question, though, is what you can do with it, and the vendors and services that are available to transact it. So Will or Connor or Vivian, do y'all have any other thoughts on it?
Connor, you want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, you can buy it just like how you buy stocks on an exchange. But I mean, what it can be used for is what anyone's willing to take. Like, I pay people, I owe them money, like bought me food, I pay them in crypto. So it's whoever's willing to take it. And, in El Salvador, they just declared it as legal tender. So now in that country, you have to take it for anything. So it's really just the limits of the imagination.
I would agree with that. The El Salvador news is pretty interesting for sure. Them declaring it legal tender alongside the dollar, I might note. It's not that you have to pay in Bitcoin only, but they are accepting it alongside the dollar. Who knows if that'll be temporary or if that will be they'll move towards Bitcoin only long term. We'll have to see, right? But I mean, there's Bitcoin ATMs around Richmond, so that you can, if you search that on Google, Bitcoin ATMs, I think I did it the other day. There's probably 2-3 dozen. So you can buy crypto there. You can buy crypto from an individual. Some of that is getting, kind of restricted and can somewhat trying to be controlled by governments, classifying people as money services businesses. If you try to sell crypto individually to a person, you'll have to do full know your customer information, which is anti-money laundering checks. And so that has restricted a lot of people from just selling Bitcoin to individuals. But it is possible. There's also over-the-counter OTC trading desks that will trade you large quantities of Bitcoin off an exchange so that you don't move the price. They take a cut, and usually it's around 2-3%, but that might be pretty good if you're trying to allocate $200 million investment or a $10 million investment, and you don't really want to move the market. So there are several ways to buy this. You can also mine it, and that includes getting a Bitcoin machine, a miner. It kind of looks like this, and that will continuously pay you out through the proof of work mining mechanism, which is probably a little too technical for this talk.
Yeah, well, I wanted to take it back a little bit because we're talking about uses of Bitcoin. And since this is what just happened for a lot of us, I think either last month or the month before, is we couldn't get gas at the gas station because of a ransomware attack. And then it was paid in Bitcoin. And then there may have been, the government got the Bitcoin back. So can you help us kind of understand what happened there? We had Peter from Henderson, Nevada asked, did the US government hack the wallets of this company that received the ransom? And does that mean that Bitcoin is not as secure as we think it is?
Right. So this group, DarkSide, which is a hacker group, which basically facilitates, they built some hacker tools, or they built and distributed some hacker tools. They made that available to anyone that basically wanted to go after any sort of large corporation or any institution that has a lot of money. The way ransomware typically works is they'll get into your systems, they'll lock a lot of your important, valuable information down and encrypt it, and then they will demand a payment, right? Sometimes that payment comes in the form of Bitcoin, sometimes it's in the form of Monero if they're smarter. And then when you pay up, they will, and in one of these cryptocurrencies, typically, then they will release you the encryption key and you're allowed to get all your information back. So what happened here is that the law enforcement basically was able to track who hacked this group. I'm guessing through basic cybersecurity, protocols. They were able to acquire the Bitcoin, the BTC pay server, which basically was the facilitation mechanism of this payment. They were able to seize that server from the cloud, and on that server were the private keys for the wallets that facilitated this payment. And as such, they were able to move the funds at that point in time. I think that the government would love to discourage people from using these systems, and so they will spin the news in kind of whatever way that suits them. But no, Bitcoin is not any less secure, right, from any of this news. They just did basic kind of track and trace methodologies and were able to seize this server and then move the funds.
So when you say private key, so for our audience, is that kind of your ATM passcode, if you will?
So yes, private keys are, you can think of it as a, you can hold Bitcoin off an exchange or off of, I would say off an exchange. So you can think about this like as the passcode to your vault that holds your gold, right? And if you have the passcode to the vault, then you're able to take the gold out and spend it or move it, right? Whether that's to another vault that you own or someone else's vault. And I think that's the way you would think about it.
Okay. Joe, do you have anything else on that?
Yeah, and I'll say that Bitcoin and most of the crypto systems have never been hacked, and that's one of the beauties of them. The mathematics that underpins them and the cryptography that underpins them it's the same as the encryption that you use for logging into a secure your bank or financial institution or Amazon or anything. The same security that's involved there is involved in cryptocurrencies, most of them. And so the one way to think of the analogy of these wallets is that like it's your a stored value card, so a credit card that has money on it. It doesn't have any name on it, but it's got a 16-digit number, and then there's a PIN that's associated with it. And so when law enforcement finds that, they might not know whose it is, but they've got some of that information. And if they have the private key or the PIN, then they can get into it and see the value that's on there. The trick of it too, though, and that's what most of the cryptocurrency systems, once they know that wallet address and the money that's on there, or any of the other wallets that have ever sent money to that, it's all completely traceable and all completely trackable on the blockchain. And so blockchain is this underlying kind of distributed ledger technology, distributed database that is what was the real innovation of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, that has applications in other IT systems and IT information technology use cases. But it is a good technology. It is good and solid. It's not hackable, but it's also completely traceable. And ransomware and cyber criminals that are using it, that's what I do professionally, that are using Bitcoin are fools, because it's totally traceable. And I would say I'd actually submit that, at least from the American perspective and potentially other developed countries, the fact that they can increasingly track down the bad guys or the bad actors and recover some of those funds is reducing some of the anxiety from the regulators, because they want to make sure that people aren't getting hurt, and constituents or the citizens have some recourse if they do fall victim to somebody snatching their purse. I mean, it's the same kind of crimes and criminal activity that we see in the real world, and now they can actually track back and get some of it and reclaim it. So it's actually good for the industry.
I'd like to add one point to this too. If the cryptography on Bitcoin is hacked, truly hacked, we have much larger problems at hand, right? Because all of our bank databases are backed up by the same cryptography. All the NSA databases are, backed up by the same cryptography. All of our military communication is backed up by the same cryptography. So if that cryptography system is hacked, like, we are in a very, very dangerous, different world, right? And you'll see tons of hacks of, our entire systems, our nuclear facilities, everything, right? Depends on the same cryptography that backs up Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing is it's all open source code. That's the beauty of it. You could pull up the code right now. And the thing with that is there's so many more people working on it simultaneously all over the world. So it's just like so many more people that are there to find like bugs or whatever it is.
You mentioned all over the world. Vivian, I'd love to bring you in, some of the broader and more global effects. What does this mean for developing nations, for people who are unbanked? What are some of the unintended consequences of things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies?
So most of my work is done in developing countries, and the difference between the undeveloped world or the developing world and the developed world is the number of people who don't have access to formal banking institutions. To put it in context, the United States, according to the Federal Reserve, 7.7% of the population doesn't own bank accounts. And then a total, if you add the people who don't own formal bank accounts, and then those who are not sufficiently banked, which I won't explain because it's kind of subjective. But so 25% of the population is underbanked, but only less than 8% doesn't have bank accounts. Contrast that to El Salvador, where 70% of the population does not have bank accounts. I've been affiliated with the Institute of Money, Technology, and Financial Inclusion. And I remember vividly one particular presentation where somebody from Sri Lanka was explaining that in order for somebody to go to the bank from a rural area might involve, walking 3 hours, possibly running into a tiger, just to go to the bank, because there's no bank if you live in a remote rural area. So in the developing world, brick and mortar facilities aren't enough. And so, but cell phones are everywhere, right? So you have, for example, in Kenya, 85% of the people own mobile phones. In El Salvador, I looked this up yesterday, actually there are more cell phones than people because one person might have more than one cell phone with a different SIM card using a different network, et cetera, et cetera. So because there are more cell phones than banks, it makes sense in the developing world to harness the thing that everybody has to give them access to finances if possible. So the question though is crypto the answer, or is crypto one of the possibilities? So I think what is very interesting is that in El Salvador, we'll figure out whether crypto is the answer or not. It's way too early to tell. What I can say though is that there's been a test in El Salvador for 18 months. So in a beach town called El Zonte, people they basically experimented with what happens if you give people cryptocurrency and allow people to interact with cryptocurrency and use cryptocurrency as a form of payment. So they did this for 18 months. And to give you context, El Salvador is a dollarized economy. So they actually use dollars as their official currency. And, thanks to this experiment in this particular time, like, well, why don't you use cryptocurrency instead? So after 18 months, what was found was that about 90% of people ended up using cryptocurrency as part of their transactions. However, the use of, and it was Bitcoin exclusively, right? So did everybody stop using dollars and only use Bitcoin? No. Bitcoin became one of the ways in which people were paid for goods and services, paid their bills, et cetera, et cetera. For retailers, it was found that up to 50% of daily sales could be made using Bitcoin, but people were still using cash, right? And other payment forms. So according to this little experiment, it only, it's become part of the financial ecosystem, but it hasn't replaced the financial ecosystem. Other countries which have used other mobile phone-based payments, but not cryptocurrency, include Kenya, for example, which has been sort of a star when it comes to talking about mobile money, which is a cell phone-based payment system, but it is built on the national currency. So the difference between that and crypto is basically mobile banking on your phone, but not through the bank system, through mobile phone operators, right? And so, but the difference again is that's not crypto, but it's harnessing the power of the phone. And mobile money has become something that has been, the use of it has increased in developing countries, but not as the same rate as Kenya. So for example, in Kenya, I believe that in about 2 years, 85% of the country was using M-Pesa. Contrast that to Ghana, where I've done a lot of field work, where it took about 10 years to get to a lot of people using mobile money in Ghana, right? Compare that to Bitcoin, where globally, Bitcoin started in 2009. And, in 2011, I was tracking stories of people who were posting blogs like, I'm going to try and travel all around the world only using Bitcoin, and then they would blog about the experiences and talk about how hard it was. Now in 2021, a lot more people are, talking about Bitcoin. We're having this seminar and so on. So a lot more people know about it, but not everybody does. And what you find is that people who live below the poverty line, some minorities in the United States are less likely to know about Bitcoin than other people. So it's a tricky situation because on the one hand, having cell phone, based payments and stuff like that can make stuff easier because people don't have to deal with a formal banking system. On the other hand, a lot of the people who don't have the banks may also not know about Bitcoin. Of course, you can fix that by, doing a lot more outreach work, getting the word out there. But it's currently a double-edged sword because one, it has the potential of reaching more people if you use cell phone-based payments. But on the other hand, it can also have the unintended consequence of getting some people or leaving some people who are already financially excluded even more so.
I certainly hope some of those people kept their Bitcoins from 2011 or
Going on top of that, most of this conversation so far has been about Bitcoin, but to me, all the fun and exciting stuff is happening in decentralized finance. So Bitcoin, it was the first crypto to be made. It's the simplest, but all the excitement is happening in decentralized finance. It's lending and borrowing, derivatives, staking, all this cool stuff. And it's all permissionless. So think about all the financial services in the world. What's one common intermediate? What's one common thing? They all have an intermediary, a bank, someone in the middle facilitating all of these transactions. And what's one thing that enforces all these transactions? Contracts that are enforced by a court system made up of lawyers and judges. But in the world, decentralized finance world, there's a thing called smart contracts, which are contracts enforced by computer code, which are self-executing. And you always know what's going to happen because, like I said, it's all open source code, and code is inherently dumb. It's only done what it's told to do. So speaking of banking to unbanked, Bitcoin is a good start, but there's so much more to be happening. Like there's decentralized exchanges where you can exchange assets for one another without someone telling you what you can and can't do. And then you can move your money around without banks putting freezes on it. There's so much more fun. So you can lend it out and earn highest interest rates than what these banks give you. Because right now, like I'd like to think about it like this. All right, so the US dollar, what is it backed by? The good faith and credit of the government, whatever that means. All right. And then, so I like to think it's imaginary, it's money. It's made up because they tell us it has value. And it can only exist within imaginary lines drawn on a globe. Crypto is borderless. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can do the exact same things. It doesn't discriminate. It's all permissionless. So this is banking to unbanked. Bitcoin is just a start.
No, I agree, and I apologize for focusing only on Bitcoin, but that wasn't my intention. However, I do want to point out that cryptocurrency in general, yes, it's borderless. It has the potential of reaching more people, but a lot of it, you need a smartphone for it, right? So what about the people who cannot afford? Because you're talking about, people who are trading, buying stocks and bonds. That's engagement with the formal market, the formal financial sector, which is regulated, right? But what about the people who've never heard of a stock market? What about the farmer in, rural El Salvador? Since this, it's like, these people don't know about ETFs. What's an ETF to somebody who's, right? So part of it is that I think cryptocurrency obviously works for a lot of people. It's just, I think as things develop, we need to not forget the underdog, because some people have been left out, and there's a strong probability that they might continue to be left out. And if we really want to do something that works for all people and not just a few, then that needs to be part of the conversation. I really don't think that it has been, at least not sufficiently.
I want to wave my moderator magic wand for just a second.
Okay.
So we have a lot of great questions coming in, and I don't want to miss out on them. So let's do maybe 1 or 2 more minutes on this, and then we're going to move to some of these great questions that I think our whole panel is going to enjoy answering.
One thing I'll say is, like I mentioned, there are numerous functions of money and currency systems. And what any one particular one doesn't take into consideration, particularly cryptocurrency, let's say Bitcoin, is that of the 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, there are large swaths of people that have completely different views of money than how, say, Americans, in particular, Western cultures see it. And so the idea of money representing, which it hasn't traditionally represented, a risk opportunity and an investment opportunity, that isn't what money itself is. Money and currency are not supposed to be that way. And that kind of thing is either very foreign, completely unknown, unimaginable to billions of other people, or in some cases, there's hundreds of millions for whom that's anathema. Like they don't want that. I mean, in Muslim countries and some of them, there's a gradation of how austere they view it. And so the idea that there'll be a world currency has to contend with the fact that there's a spectrum of how the world views money. Most folks have never even conceived of capitalism, at least as it's defined in America or Western countries, or actively don't like it and don't need it. And so the idea that any particular money can solve that or can appeal to everybody misses the point that
Joe, Schilling, I have one comment to make. I'll make it quick.
Go for it.
Okay. So I think one of the things that could really help when we're talking about the unbanked is, if you think about our credit system, right? It's managed by Experian and some other credit institutions. These are centralized entities that collect a lot of information on you, collect like who you've paid, who you haven't paid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But these distributed systems could give the unbanked an opportunity to set up an account and then have this payment record, right, substantiated into this global payment system where they could point to anyone who wants to potentially provide them credit to expand their farm, to expand anything, right? They can say, hey, look, you can see, here's my address, right? You can see all the transactions that have been paid to my address, right? You can see all the payments that I've made to my suppliers. I've always been on time, right? My customers that I'm selling to, they're always paying me. I'm a very good credit risk. Can you please provide me some funds, right? And you don't need a centralized system kind of managing that credit system in your country or in your town, right? You can just point to this global payment ledger, right, that anyone can access with an internet connection, even if you don't specifically have this internet connection at your facility, right? Maybe it's in your town, but you're out in a remote area. And so I think that in itself, is really promising. I think the thing that probably is holding back crypto currently is getting backing from the legal systems that exist around the world, right?
Because they're afraid.
Yeah, you'll see this, and actually, Connor might be excited about this. Texas has actually made Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies part of the Uniform Commercial Code that was passed about a month ago. And so what that allows is it makes Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies a formalized asset, right, underneath the Uniform Commercial Code, so that you can actually back that up in a legal setting. And so I think that really opens the doors to NFTs, which you've heard about from NFT art, right, being sold for large amounts of money, or CryptoKitties, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that NFTs could come to represent titles for cars, land, right, these assets that we trade, on a day-to-day basis that we all have, right, our mortgage, et cetera. And so I think that it's really promising, but we need more states, kind of like Texas, they're going to go to bat for the industry.
Well, I think CryptoKitty. All right, Connor, last point.
I was about to say, at the end of the day, this is innovation, and history has proved itself time and time again. The countries that fight and try to push away from innovation, they're the ones that get left behind. That's why there's such a disparity between your world, between third world countries and first world countries. Countries that accept and embrace innovation, innovation always wins at the end of the day. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, I think CryptoKitties is a good segue to some of these great questions that are coming in. So as a reminder, pop the questions in the chat or the Q&A or the Facebook Live comments. So we've had several questions about mining. So I'm going to try to lump these together and put it out there for anybody who wants to take them. Ferris asks, where do you see the future of mining heading? And then Jeff asks, can you explain what happened in China with miners were they banned? Now they're coming here. Who wants to kind of take that, talk about mining and where that's been and where that's going?
I think Will.
Okay,
good one for that.
I can take it. All right. So China is in an interesting predicament right now. They are trying to become like a formal competitor to the US, right? And they can't do that if they continue to rely on the same financial system and the same payment rails that the US has. If they're reliant on the dollar, they can't become a formal competitor. And so what they've decided to do is go bullish on blockchain technology, right? But what they don't want is this public open system that they can't control. What they want is to use the blockchain technology that Bitcoin formalized to create their own cryptocurrency and then use that private system to enable trading partners across the world in their kind of, what is it called? The Silk Road Initiative, right? And so I think that what they're trying to do is they are trying to spread doubt and make sure that their citizenry is not investing in cryptocurrencies, right? Is not investing in this alternative payment system that's based on the same technology, right? Not giving their citizens this kind of like open opt-out alternative, right? While at the same time promoting the same technology, right, that underlies these public systems with their own private system. And so, kicking out the miners is a part of that, but I will say that not all the miners have been kicked out, right? If you are cozy with the Chinese Communist Party, you get to stay, right? But a lot of the other miners are being kicked out, like with kind of no notice. China actually, a couple of years ago, said, like, if you want to continue operating, please file your name and where you operate, et cetera, right, with the government, and we'll give you kind of a legal protection to stay here and continue mining. All of those operators, or a lot of those operators, just got sent notices, shut down your operation. You have 2 weeks to leave, ship everything out, right? As for where that goes, right? Miners want the cheapest, most reliable power, right? A lot of that's going to go to Russia. A lot of that's going to kind of like try to go near China, but kind of just outside the border, because it's just easier to move this infrastructure. I think the mainstream media or the news, talked about, moving like, I don't know, 6,000 pounds of miners right around or something like that. That's like 200 miners. That's not a lot. I think what we're really seeing is an exodus of probably around like 200,000 miners, pieces of equipment moving outside of China. A lot of that's going to come here, right? A lot of that's going to come here. We have very good, reliable energy. And I think that's going to a lot of infrastructure and the capital is going to come to the U.S., which I think is.
The problem with mining, though, and miners is that they're getting in a system kind of from they're mining to create a coin to then sell it in the market when it's profitable for their investment in mining, and so it's a different form of investment, but they're exiting the Bitcoin system so that they can get dollars or whatever currency they want, and so they're actually less committed to Bitcoin. They're simply extracting that Bitcoin based on.
Well, what they're doing is using fiat dollars to secure the Bitcoin network, right? So like they have to pay for all their infrastructure in dollars. They have to pay all their employees probably in dollars, right? And so you're basically using this outside currency to secure this other system, right? Which is Bitcoin. Do you have to sell Bitcoin to like fund those dollar expenses? Absolutely you do, right? But that helps with the distribution mechanism, no?
And I saw something in the comments about the environment.
I don't understand the commitment to miners, and particularly the people that are investing in mining companies. They're doing that from an investment perspective with the intention not of increasing their holdings in Bitcoin. They're doing it as a way to arbitrage the price of Bitcoin against their investment with the expenses in dollars. And so they're
well, we need mining because it's securing the network. Like it's literally the security of it. And I saw something about the environment. People always take this out of context. The thing with Bitcoin, you can directly measure the energy consumption. But think about what's the security of the US dollar? Well, you can measure that in lives lost because the United States, it derives its power from the wars that it's won. And then you can also talk about the energy consumption of the banking system. the gold mining all around the world. People don't want to talk about it. They just talk about context because these governments, these institutions, they're afraid because this is a direct threat to the power and the chokehold that they put on the world for such a long time. This is really power to the people.
All right, we're going to get to some more questions here that we had submitted. I'm going to save this. We've had like one question be asked like 5 different times. We'll save that one until right before Amy gives me a hook at 12:58. Question from Mark from Prince Frederick, Maryland. What can we anticipate, down the line with federal regulations and taxation and kind of where that's headed when we're talking about the Bitcoin space or the crypto space here in the US?
I don't think anyone can honestly answer that question because the thing is, this space is moving so fast. This is all I think about every day, and I can't possibly learn everything. So then you got to think about these regulators, these people that they have so much other stuff to worry about, like stacks and ETFs and all this other stuff. They don't know anything about this stuff, so they're just as lost as most people are. So regulations, they can provide a framework. They want a KYC and AML, all this stuff, but they do that through the fiat on ramps and off ramps. So no one can honestly say, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. Because I was at the Bitcoin conference, I was talking to lawyers who work directly with congressmen, and they're still as confused as anyone else. So there's no, if anyone says they know the answer, they don't.
Joe,
Yeah,
Will,
I'll say that all that is, and the only way that these systems can flourish and can grow is if they can be regulated and understood. I mean, the average citizen is not going to participate in something that they could potentially get screwed, and people that are buying large quantities of it, I guess anticipating regulations so that they're, they're able to transact in it. I mean, at a minimum, existing laws related to misrepresentation and fraud and things of that nature are still going to prevail, and so and the average citizen is not going to participate in a currency system unless they're protected. I wouldn't. Who would participate in that?
I do, because I don't like these banks. I don't like them telling me what I can and can't do with my money. I like having the power in my own hands and doing what I want with my money. So obviously, it's the safety comes with that. But at the end of the day, if you mess up, that's on you. Some people like a safety net. But, these banks, they don't have our best interests in mind. They're profit driven. So are all these politicians. Majority of these people don't actually care about us. But this is why this is really moving this power to people.
I appreciate your passion, Connor. We need someone like you on the panel. We did have a good question, Tony from Richmond. Again, kind of with the Fed. Do you think the Federal Reserve will create some crypto coin tied to the U.S. dollar? Or, I'll even put it out to Vivian. Vivian, could we see other developing nations kind of adopting Bitcoin as a sovereign currency or dipping their toe in the water?
I think the question that Tony was asking, though, is are these institutions going to adopt, right, like a technology that they control, that is their system on these rails? But I don't know. Go ahead, Vivian.
Vivian?
Will other countries do it? I think that other countries will be looking very closely at what happens in El Salvador. But to sort of piggyback onto what Will said, I think that there's a difference between leveraging an existing crypto versus creating one's own crypto, because those would be two different things. But regardless, I think everybody's very interested in, is El Salvador's attempt going to be a success or not?
A lot of people, one of the main concerns right now is the volatility of it. There's things called stable coins that are algorithmic stable coins. There's very in development right now, and they're and it's all experiments right now. But once everything gets worked out, algorithmic stable coins are going to be the future. Because like I said, why should the money be in control of these central bankers? Really do your research, look at the history of them. They really don't care about us. I don't want to get too controversial, but if anyone wants to DM me, we can talk.
Connor, I got to ask you. So I think you might be uniquely suited to answer this question. Robert from Richmond asked, have you heard of the G999 coin? Have you heard of that? Anybody else?
No.
Okay. Sorry, Robert. I just wanted to make sure to throw that out there. So So it's 12:53. So we got 5 more minutes for questions. So the number one question we've received is kind of, is it worth it to buy Bitcoin? Mary from Richmond asks, is it worth it to invest? John from Midlothian, would you let your mother buy Bitcoin? So remembering that we're not financial advisors, I'm going to throw that out there. Would you let your mother or your father or an older friend buy Bitcoin? Would you suggest it?
Well, I already told my parents to, and they didn't listen to me. They kind of think crazy, but no, I'm not gonna get.
I would say this, and this is the most rational case that I can make for buying Bitcoin. I think that it is a system that takes root, right, and really succeeds. It can provide, asymmetric returns, right? It can provide exponential returns as well, right? And so I would say if you're thinking about this from an investment standpoint, whether you're retired or anyone else, I would say, how much do you trust the current system, right? If you trust the current system wholeheartedly, I would put 1% of your investable assets into Bitcoin, right? If you don't trust the system, I would put 3% of your investable assets into Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. I wouldn't mortgage the house, right? I wouldn't put a whole lot of money into it. I would put enough into it so that if the current systems collapse or Bitcoin gains substantial market share as compared to the current systems, then you will stand to benefit and treat it almost as a hedge on the current system just not doing well going into the future.
Vivi and Joe?
As a psychologist, I would say in all investments, you need to know your risk tolerance, and you shouldn't do stuff that you shouldn't choose investment strategies on anything that are not consistent with your risk tolerance, because it's an uninsured risk. So, but it's, risky investments sometimes have high returns and sometimes they don't. So,
well, I mean, to the extent that people go to casinos, which just got legalized in Virginia, and have fun doing that, there certainly is an element of that. It's fun for a few hours, or it's fun to spend a couple $100 or a few $100 and watch what happens, or less, $50, some nominal amount. Part of the problem again is if to the point made earlier that if Bitcoin gets hacked, there's larger problems because the cryptography has been broken. There are some counter arguments that it can be encrypted with whatever that new technology is. But if you're investing in Bitcoin because you think that the world is going to collapse, that's a different issue and a whole nother issue. I'm not sure that Bitcoin can save us if the existing institutions and systems collapse. And so I personally don't want them to collapse. I don't believe that they will collapse.
No, I don't want them to collapse either, Joe. Because if they're going to collapse, you're better off owning guns and potatoes and a good source of potable water.
Yeah. And so there is a lot of good about it. There are a lot of problems with the dollar and the way that it's been done and or managed over the years post World War II and things like that. And so there are a lot of things that can and should be fixed, and hopefully they will. But running for the hills and rejecting the system or banking on its total collapse means that you're putting your faith in the hands of the people who were early adopters to Bitcoin and their ultimate benevolence, which there's no democratic vote in Bitcoin. The people who have bought it, there are lots of famous people who have bought large sums of it under the presumption then that they will be the kingmakers. And so today's revolutionary is tomorrow's conservative. And so it's really hard to say that we're in a better system that's purely driven by computer code and whoever has cornered the market.
Well, I will say that no government issued currency has ever stood the test of time. They're all designed to fail. Like no one appreciates the value. They all just look at the charts. They just that's not true. Well, so what government currency is around?
It's 12:58. I see Amy's on the screen. I've really enjoyed talking to all of you. Fabulous panel, and I'll hand it back to our host, Amy.
Can you guys hear me and see me okay? Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I was not on camera, but smiling and laughing the whole time. Special thank you to our moderator, Joe Schilling, and your magic moderator wand. I'll need to remember that one for the future. And our amazing panelists, Dr. Jokido, Dr. Walton, Connor, and Will. Wow, I could have listened to you for hours. Maybe a co-hosting crypto podcast is in your future, though there's a lot of those, but y'all were really good. I'm kidding, but not really. VCU alumni, faculty, staff, and students, and family members of current students appreciate your expertise and experience you all bring to this topic. Your time is incredibly valuable, as we know and recognize this is a busy time for everyone. So we want to thank you for answering our questions live today. We will be reposting this webinar to Facebook and YouTube with closed captioning for later viewing. For those on the webinar, we will be sending a follow-up email with the recording and survey, and we have linked to the survey in the chat box that we would appreciate if you could complete. We really value your feedback and want to know what we should keep doing more of and how we can improve. So thank you everyone again, and we will hopefully see you soon. Go Rams. Thanks, y'all.